Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I just want to disclaimer that it's 12:10, so I will try to finish in 20 minutes. It's a shorter one this time. If I go a little bit late, I apologize, but I will really, really try. Hi, I see you. Hi. Okay, so, yay! So for those of you that weren't here last week, this is part 2 of a 3-part series. And so what we talked about, what the series essentially covers is a concept of bursting your bubble. And what that means is pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And we established last week that the reason you may want to push yourself outside of your comfort zone is because your comfort zone could be holding you back, and it could be preventing you from leaving the door open to change that God is trying to effect in your life. And so we talked about how it's self-imposed, it's a comfort zone, it limits you, and often it's composed of 3 things that are very rate limiting to the growth of your spiritual life, like self-absorption, superficiality, and sin. So last week we established what the bubble is and why we need to burst it. So this week we're going to talk about how you go about bursting that bubble, because leaving your comfort zone is never going to be something that is easy or that's comfortable. So we're going to go through today where you would go about starting, okay? Okay, so where do I start? So last week we talked about how if your bubble is made up of self-absorption, superficiality, and sin, it becomes very dirty. And it becomes dirty to the point where you can't see outside of the bubble. So you can't see that there are other people that need to help, that you could help. Or you can't see that there are things outside of your immediate world or your immediate concern that matter more than what's in front of you. And so we said that the analogy is because the bubble is very dirty. It's not transparent. So the first step before you can burst your bubble is to clean your bubble, because you need to be able to see what's outside. You need to be able to see past your immediate interests and your immediate concerns. Sorry. Like I said, I'm Apple. I'm like struggling with the tabloid. So, first step to cleaning the bubble is self-examination. So you can't figure out what the problem is, or you can't go about fixing the problem until you identify the problem first, okay? And this is something that, you know, outside of this specific discussion has huge effects in your spiritual life in general. The idea of being able to self-examine yourself will take you places. It'll take you far. It'll take you far in your spiritual life. It'll take you far in your career. It'll take you far in your family life, because the people who are able to self-reflect and self-examine are the people that are able to change. And they are the people that are continuously able to grow and to improve. But this is something that's very difficult, because nobody wants to spend time on why they suck, essentially, right? Like, nobody wants to sit there and spend time on the things about themselves that they don't like. Everybody would much rather gloss over it. Or everybody would much rather kind of just, you know, make excuses for themselves, like, oh, I'm being too hard on myself. We're going to talk about that expression later, but, oh, I'm being too hard on myself, and, you know, I have to cut myself a break and things like that. And there are situations where that is appropriate, as long as your ability to self-examine is not affected by that, because that is always going to be the first step to you opening the door to God working, always. He will never push you. You have to look within yourself, figure out what the problem is, or figure out where the problem lies, and then He will help you. But you have to start. The one caveat I'm going to give you is that if you're doing it openly and honestly, you may not necessarily like what you find, but that means that you're doing it right. Okay? So a lot of times when people consider this concept of self-examination, they think like, okay, I'm going to, you know, pray and this and that, and God's going to give me like something little about myself that I can change. And like, they don't understand that if they're truly starting to self-reflect, like honestly and openly, that it might just be the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, it might be more than what you anticipated. But if your intentions are pure and your motivations are pure, and you really from the bottom of your heart are looking to be changed by Him and purified by Him and refined by Him and to grow with Him, then the iceberg is what you're looking for, right? Like, you guys are all wonderful people, I'm sure. Those I know and those I don't know, you guys are all wonderful people. But nobody in this room doesn't have an iceberg. Nobody. Myself included. You can ask my husband. I have 100 icebergs, okay? Nobody doesn't have that. So the iceberg is what you're looking for. It's what you're asking him to show you is the iceberg, because him being able to show you that is where the most change is going to happen. So I caution you that you might bite off more than you can chew, but then my encouragement is that that's actually what you want, is that the more overwhelmed you are by what he's shown you, the better it is for you, because the more capacity you then have to change and to push it forward. Yeah, okay. It's okay. So, we talked about first cleaning the bubble with self-examination, okay? So looking inside of yourself and trying to figure out where your true motivations lie and what parts of yourself you feel like you need to change. So last week when we ended the discussion, we talked about take this week and figure out where in your life the sources of self-absorption, superficiality, and sin lie. Where are they? Like, you can pick one, you can pick all three, you can pick one from each category, that's fine, okay? That is self-reflection. That is self-examination. Figuring out what of those apply to your specific life, because everybody's application is going to be different in this room. I can't give you a blanket statement. I can give you mine. Mine are pretty ugly. I can give you mine, but mine don't matter to you. So that's self-examination, okay? Call your sin by name, okay? This one, for many, is very, very, very difficult, okay? Because denial is comfortable. It's very comfortable, okay? And the example for me that makes this real is, have you ever seen, like, I've never actually attended an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but have you ever seen, like, the stereotype of it on a TV show or whatever? And they always start, I don't know if this is true or not, but they always start the meeting with, is it true? Rami's saying it is true. Rami's been in work, I think, right? Yeah, okay. I'm making him look so bad already. Sorry, babe. They always start the circle with, my name is Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic, right? Like, they always establish right at the beginning that I have a problem. Because if you don't establish right at the beginning what needs to be changed, you are more likely to just gloss over it. Or you're more likely to cut yourself excuses. Or you're more likely to just, like, sugarcoat it. But Alcoholics Anonymous, they're also, I believe, a faith-based organization, right? And so their primary, like, first step is acknowledgement, is call it what it is. My name is Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic, hypothetically, okay? That's call your sin by name, right there. Is you figure out what the problem is, and then you address it, okay? Admit it, own up to it. Like, that makes it real. When you call it what it is, when you address it for what it is, it makes it real. And part of what makes that so hard is, A, you don't want to believe these negative things about yourself. You don't want to believe that you've lost control to whatever, or like you've succumbed to whatever, or you never thought you were going to be doing this and now it's a regular part of your life. Sure, that's hard, okay? Part of what makes that even more difficult is once you acknowledge it, once you call it by name, you know it has to change. And a lot of people just don't want to take on that, like, overwhelming, I don't want to say burden, but that, like, obligation to change, or that, like you have to do it. It's like when you were studying, I don't know if some of you guys are still studying, but when I was studying, and I know there's an exam coming, and I just keep, like, not looking at it and pushing it back and, like, oh, I still have a week, I still have a few days, I still have whatever, because I know I have to do a lot, and I just don't want to right now. That's exactly what this is. As soon as you admit it, the deadline for the exam is right there. You can no longer just procrastinate about it, because you've called it what it is. You've owned it, you've acknowledged it, you've admitted it. Don't sugarcoat it, okay? This concept of you're being too hard on yourself, my husband's going to disagree with me, so I'm just going to not look in his direction right now, okay? And I'm going to give you an actual example just from this past week. So I was in confession just this past week with my father of confession, and so, just for your information, we're newish to each other. Like, I've just recently switched from a father of confession who, like, has had some personal issues, so is not able to continue. I didn't annoy him, I don't think. He just is not around, so I had to find somebody else. And so this one, I really like this one. I think this is really going to work because he's like on my wavelength, and he's like uber logical like I am, and he's very like, you know, he just addresses it like right there, and he's great, okay? And so we were talking about something that I'm working on, something that's bothering me, and he kept saying, Sarah, don't be too hard on yourself. And like, this is not like a learning point, like me learning from Abuna. This is actually an argument that we had in the confession, is me telling him like, you know, I don't really like that expression, okay? There are people in the world who are always too hard on themselves. I totally agree, okay? And those are the people that like, you know, woe is me and everything is hard, sure, okay? But the people that actually have something to fix or something to change, like, maybe I'm old school in my thinking, and I probably am, but like, be hard on yourself. Like, that's how you're gonna change it. Like, I come from a very old school upbringing, okay? Very, very old school. Like, I can't even tell you. Like, if you knew my background, you would not expect me to be here, like in SMSV. Very old school, okay? And some of the things from my upbringing, I've continued, and I feel like are correct and very, like, much, like, important and inherent in my spiritual life now. Some things, like, I see the light now, some things, okay? But other things I hold too strongly, and this is something that I hold too strongly, is if there is something about yourself that is wrong, be hard on yourself. Be hard on yourself. And my husband's going to disagree with me because he's from another kind of upbringing, okay? But be hard on yourself. Like, if there is something that needs to be changed, call it what it is. Like, I think the nice way to say it is, like, call a spade, but, like, what I tell my husband is, if you're an idiot, you're an idiot. Like, you have to call it what it is. Like, if this is wrong, and I've lost control to it, I'm addicted. Okay? Like, if I chronically lie, I'm a liar. You call it what it is. Like, if you sugarcoat this, there are things in life, and I've learned through the hard way, there are things in life where delivery is key, right? With yourself, maybe it's just me, but my personal way to get through this kind of stuff is I don't sugarcoat anything with myself. Like, it is what it is. Because I can sugarcoat it to protect other people's feelings, but the more I sugarcoat to myself, the further away I am from change, and the further I am from addressing what needs to change. So this whole concept of don't be too hard on yourself, okay, but like, kind of. Like, if you need to change something, call it what it is. Don't sugarcoat it, don't procrastinate it, don't give yourself excuses. Call it what it is. The sooner you acknowledge it, the closer you are to fixing it. Okay, so now you've self-reflected, figured out what the problem is. You've acknowledged the problem, acknowledged that it's an issue that you need to change. Now what? I've just given you the 2 hardest steps, and you've laid it all out, and now you're like tormented, and I'm horrible, and I'm this, and I'm that, and now what? How am I going to fix it? The next step is ask him. Like, there will be steps after this, okay? 100% there will be steps after this. But before you try to take on anything yourself, you have to acknowledge that you can do nothing, that you are capable of doing nothing. If you could do this by yourself, it wouldn't be an issue. If you could do this by yourself, it would have already been done. So you figure out what the problem is, you acknowledge the problem for what it is, and then you ask him. You ask him, you say, this has been a problem for this long. Obviously, like, I'm overcome by it. Obviously, I'm overwhelmed by it. Help me. And what I want to tell you about this part is he knows your struggles. He knows your limits. He knows why this is a problem for you, but he also sees what you could be. Like, you can't see anything outside of your bubble, but he can see everything outside of your bubble. He knows your potential. He knows where you could be. He already sees where he's going to take you. Like, he sees more for you than you could ever see. Like, all the problems that are staring you in the face, all the problems that are, like, humbling you and, like, cutting down your confidence, he sees those, and then he sees what happens when those are no longer issues. He sees your potential. And more than you want to fix this, he wants you to fix this. Because he knows that you are capable of much more. And he sees what you're capable of beyond your reasoning, way beyond your reasoning. So you figure out what the problem is, you call it by name, and then you ask him. Because there is nobody more invested in fixing this than he is. Nobody. He's by far number one more invested than you. Okay, eliminate the root cause. I'm hesitating because this is the one that I struggle with, okay? Out of all of the ones that we've talked about so far, this one is probably my biggest struggle. So, like, I'm very, I can be very hard on myself and, self-reflection and all that kind of stuff and ask him for help, but then that's kind of where I draw the line. I don't want to do anything after that. I just give it to him and then I'm done, right? Like, I don't want to do anything else about it. So this is the one that I struggle with, is eliminating the root cause. So you've self-reflected, okay? You've figured out what the problem is. You've acknowledged the problem. You've asked him to guide your steps. Now what? Now what? This is the hard part. For me. For some people, the first steps might be the harder part. For me, this is the hard part. Because this is the part that requires you to make a commitment to change and sticking with it, okay? Is eliminating the root cause. So where's the temptation? Where's the opportunity? Where's the motivation? And then blanket rule. You just get rid of it. And it sounds so black and white, but if you make exceptions to this rule, then you set yourself up for failure. So for example, we talked about AA. If you're an alcoholic, don't go to bars. Blanket rule. Blanket rule. Why would you set yourself up for failure? Why would you commit to something and then set yourself up in a situation that is likely to make you fall? Blanket rule. No exceptions. Okay? You can't withstand peer pressure? Make new friends. You struggle with pride? Don't speak in public. Blanket rule. The problem is the blanket rule. That's the problem, okay? With any change in your life, sometimes it's easier to make changes in this aspect, but not so much in this one. Like, it makes more sense here, but not here. Like me, when I diet, okay? It's easy for me to eat clean when I'm with friends who eat clean, okay? But then I go to a wedding, I go to a party, I go to whatever, and they have the late night station. Okay? I'm setting myself up for failure. Just leave. Leave at 10:30, it's fine. I'm setting myself up for failure. It's the same thing. What you surround yourself with often can dictate your success. Often. Okay? You surround yourself with the things that you're trying to change, your odds of changing are a lot less. You remove those things, those temptations, those motivations, and your odds of success jump. Absolutely. Don't set a goal, but then set yourself up to fail. Don't tell yourself that you're going to commit to something, and then give yourself reason why that commitment is not possible. It doesn't make any sense. And, okay, again, my husband would disagree about this part, okay? Like I said, maybe we should get him to do a talk one time so that you guys can see both, approaches, okay? My husband's not like this, okay? But I am of the be hard on yourself school of thought. This is, okay, and I just have to clarify because I'm going to get fired. This is not like dogma or like the church says. This is not. This is Sarah thinks, okay? And Sarah is often wrong. I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to provoke thought, okay? You figure out what's right and what's wrong, whatever. I'm not here to teach anything, okay? Sarah thinks, not the church, okay, that you should be hard on yourself, okay? So when you're self-reflecting and when you're calling your sin by name, you be hard on yourself, okay? And when you're trying to figure out the root cause, you always assume your own weakness. Always. Me, Sarah says, okay? Always. Because the people who have fallen are the people who have walked into the situation thinking that they're infallible, that they're not susceptible to this temptation. Those are the people that fell. Because you give yourself a sense of false confidence. You walk into this, you're an alcoholic, you walk into a wedding reception with an open bar and you think, not an issue. Of course it's an issue. It's everywhere. Socially, it's everywhere, right? You walk, you're dieting and you don't want to eat sweets and then you walk into a cupcake shop. What? It doesn't make any sense. You always assume that you're going to fall. Because when you have that assumption in your mind, your guard is up. You are constantly aware. You're constantly weary. You're fighting. You walk into the battle already fighting. That's why you assume your own weakness. My husband will give you another other perspective, but that's fine, okay? Watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. Watch and pray. That's exactly why you assume your weakness. Because you are supposed to always be watching and praying. Whatever you've identified this past week as the parts of your bubble that need to be burst and the parts of your bubble that need to be cleaned, you should be watching and praying about it, always. Whatever situation you're in, that should be on the forefront of your mind. Watch and pray. Because you let your guard down and you fall. But if you have no guard, you've already fallen. You've lost the battle before you even started. Okay? Okay, this is where it gets a little bit more controversial, okay? So, flee from sin as you would from the plague. This is one of my favorite quotes by St. John Chrysostom. Love it, okay? Flee from sexual immorality, great, but you, O man of God, flee these things. Flee also youthful lust, okay? I always, always, always get fought on this point, okay? And I have already, like, self-disclosed to you people that you're the smartest group I've ever spoken to in my life. Everybody's, like, high school and, like, whatever. There's not a lot of battles, okay? I always get fought on this point because I believe in it very strongly. And like I said, Sarah, okay? I don't know what the church, I'm not sure. Sarah thinks, okay? Don't misunderstand me. I'm not sure, okay? Is fleeing from temptation weakness? Right? Because there are multiple schools of thought, right? There's one school of thought of like, stand and fight and I'm in the Lord's army and put on the armor of God and all that stuff, okay? And then there's Sarah, which is run like the wind, okay? Run, which is right. Thoughts. Like I said, I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to provoke thought. So what do you guys think? Because I clearly have an opinion. I'm biased. I love when IT's here. I love it.
It's like the gradual exposure of what you're running away from as you get stronger in what you're trying to fight. Does that make sense?
Make sense? Any arguments with that? I love fights, just so you know. I'm always trying to prompt one, says my husband. Yeah.
I think the whole running thing is actually great. The only reason, so I'm going to share like a story, like 2 seconds. I used to have this patient in the pharmacy when I used to work up in Barrie. He was a recovering cocaine addict, okay? He had this one rule, and I thought it was very strange. He was never outside of his house after 6 p.m. That was his blanket rule. And it was crazy. He was telling me about, and sometimes they'll come in and they'll talk to you, and you'll hear their life story and whatever. So he told me because of this, all this happened and all this stuff and the things he went through, he fell out from his family, and they grew apart. And then recently, his daughter just started to outreach to him, and she said, "I want to meet you. Let's go out for dinner." Dinner's after 6, so he was really torn up. And then I told him, like, "What are you gonna do?" He's like, "I told her we have to meet for lunch." This was his one opportunity to reconnect with his daughter. For like so many years, he had this. I could tell he was struggling with this decision, but he stuck to the rule. He ran away from his temptation. He knew that after 6 p.m., when like things got dark, that's where he found weakness. And he's been recovered for about 40 years now. He's a lot older, so I think he stuck to his rule, and I think that's why he became so successful. And because of the reason why he kept on running away, he's able to stay clean.
I think there's great strength in fleeing from temptation because, there's a lot of familiarity in our temptation. And so it's easier for us to continue doing that. But it takes a lot of strength to say, no, that's the familiar, but I'm going to go in this unfamiliar territory and I'm going to run from it in this other direction.
Yeah, I do agree with your point because I feel like a lot of times we try to say, no, like you can fight it. I think that technically does stem from pride. So I think, as we see in the Bible, like Joseph fled. Like we don't try to, if we try to give room and stick with it and entertain the thought, we're actually giving room for Satan to play with our mind, convince us, be like, oh, it's not that bad, and like slowly walk into the sin. So I think it's actually strength from God to walk away as soon as you see something. So fleeing, I think it should be the rule for everybody. And I think Pope Shenouda gave that example. If you break your arm, you don't say like, oh, like it'll heal on its own. I can still like go to work and do what I do every day. No, you put a cast on it. You don't use it at all. Like you can't give it, you can't use it. You really need to protect it. So I think it can be applied in the same way when it comes to everyday life.
I have to be honest, I was trying to feel you guys out to see how much battle I would get. Because I have a very clear preference when it comes to this discussion, very clear. And my preference is you run like the wind, okay? And maybe that preference stems from my own weakness, probably, sure, okay? I'm happy to admit that. But I am 100% with you guys. Like, to me, I will never assume that I am strong enough to fight it. I never will. Okay? Like, right now, who is standing out here at me while I was eating? I was just complaining to somebody that, like, oh yeah, I'm trying not to have sugar this weekend because I have my gestational diabetes test on Tuesday. I literally ate a plate of fruit, okay? The second you open the door, that's it. You're done. You're done, okay? That's me, okay? I have to run. I have to run, okay? And it has to be like a blanket rule. If I make one exception, like if I have, like, one Halloween candy bar, I'm done. That's it. I'm done. Like, I have to stick to the blanket rule. Because when I open the door, I've fallen, okay? And what gives me comfort, okay, false or otherwise, is that I appear not to be alone, okay? My favorite example, number one, somebody mentioned it, is Joseph. Number one, okay? The guy, like, to some people, it was a win-win. Okay, he's moving on up in the ranks, okay? He's coming out of the trenches, okay? I'm sure she was very pretty, lovely woman, possibly a stepping stone in his career, okay? And what did he do? The socially unacceptable thing, to just literally run naked, okay? Socially unacceptable, but he did it because he had to bolt. And I don't know what was going through Joseph's mind. If it was like he was so appalled because Joseph is so righteous, okay? Or like he knew he didn't stand a chance. She was that pretty, like I don't know. But he ran. I think Joseph is probably more qualified than I to stand and fight. 100%. And if even Joseph ran, it makes me feel not so bad about the fact that I run like a little girl every time, okay? And then I look at David and Samson. No judgment, okay? But you gotta figure out where you learn, okay? David and Samson both fell for different reasons. Samson is the one that, like, I have to admit, Abuna, I never understood how Samson made it. I never understood how he made it to the Hall of Faith. And I still don't understand. So one day when you talk, you explain it to me, because I don't understand, okay? She very clearly is trying to set you up. Like, you have caught her red-handed, trying to set you up multiple times. But he kept going back. He just, like, maybe it's a guy thing, like, maybe she was really pretty, like, I don't know. He kills me. And he just kept going back. Samson did not run. Samson fell. Samson had no eyes by the end of the story. Like, I don't want to end up like Samson. Like, I have to run. I have to run the way Samson ran. David was like the medium, okay? Joseph is this, like, run like the wind. Samson is stand and fight and fall, okay? David is the medium, okay? David is the, started off really strong, like, ran away, was very, like, bold against temptation, and then had a little valley where he kind of overestimated his capabilities and his ability to withstand temptation, and then he came right back up, okay? So David, the story ended well, okay? But my learning point from David is when he let his guard down. That's the learning point for me, is you let your guard down, you make an exception to your blanket rule, like you make an exception to what you think you can fight or what you think you can stand for, and then you fall. Thankfully, David came right back up, which is what this whole series is about, is cleaning the bubble, because nobody's going to like stay solid. Okay? Everybody's going to like peak and dip. Everybody's going to do that. So David is probably the perfect example for this series, because he let his guard down, but then he picked himself right back up. So for me, fleeing, to me, Sarah, not the church, Sarah, okay? To me, fleeing, it shows wisdom and discernment. It shows insight. It shows that you know that you can't do this by yourself. You know that you're a human being. You know that you have weaknesses. You know that you have flaws. It shows humility, that you know you have to run. Because if you stand there and fight, you will fall, because you're human. That's to me what it shows. It shows wisdom and it shows discernment. For me, Sarah, okay, if I were to stand and fight, it would show false confidence. False, because it is rooted in nothing. Because I have no reason to believe that I can overcome this. It is rooted in nothing. That's why it's false confidence for me. Okay? Like I said, this is my opinion, okay? And this could be very, very rooted in the fact that I have my own weaknesses that I'm struggling with constantly, okay? But take it or leave it. Like I said, not here to teach you anything, provoke thought, and then you take it where you want. Okay, so we talked about self-reflection. What else are we talking about? Yes, call your sin by name, okay? Ask him for help. And then, there you go. Yes, clean the bubble. But what was there we go. Eliminate the root cause, okay? And then, okay, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, you've done all these things, okay? You've eliminated it, and you've decided blanket rule. Let's take Bundo's example of the 6 p.m. thing, okay? Let's say his guy, for example, no going out after 6 p.m., okay? Great. You've eliminated the root cause. You know what the problem is, okay? Now, day 1 of trying to figure it out, trying to eliminate it, 6 p.m. hits. Now what? Like, I'm using Bundo's example because it's very extreme, but I like it, okay? Your examples will probably not be that extreme, but I like his, okay? 6 p.m. hits. Now what? If you sit there staring at a wall, what you have tried to eliminate will come back. Because you've now created a void. You've now created an absence that needs to be filled with something. And so if you fill it with nothing, you will default back to what's comfortable. You will default back to what you know. You will default back to your comfort zone, right? So it's not enough to just eliminate the opportunity and eliminate the motivations. You have to replace them with something, right? Like, you can't reasonably expect to create a void and then remain successful if you filled it with nothing. Someone once, when I was very young, gave me an example. He's like, let's say, and this was like when I was in school and chemistry was a thing, and now it's probably not as relevant in my brain, but he's like, let's say you have a cup, and the cup is filled with oil, okay? If you just pour a little bit of water in the oil, they will separate, okay? The only way to get the oil out is to just drown the cup in water and just keep filling it with water so that eventually the oil will just overflow, because it'll always separate. It'll always be there. And he's like, that's the same thing with what you're trying to get rid of in your life. You just have to drown it. Like, you can't just leave the glass half full with oil because the oil is still there. You have to drown it out. And so you have to fill the void. If this guy is not going to go out after 6, you better believe that he better have a lot of things planned for himself to do at 6 o'clock until he goes to sleep, which for me is like 8:30 on a good day. Like, he can't just sit there and stare at a wall and expect the thoughts not to come back. He has to replace it with something. So what do you fill the void with? A little bit of self-disclosure here. This is how I got into service, right here. This whole concept of getting rid of something, and like got into service like 100 years ago. Like my very first like step into service ever, okay, was a result of this, okay? There was something that I was trying to get rid of. I could just tell you I was like a kid, whatever, but like I was a kid, I had a really bad group of friends, like, and you know when you're a kid, friends are like your life and whatever, but like really bad, like not just like, oh, they swore a couple times, like really bad, okay? Like if we didn't drown the cup out with water, like I would be rotting in a ditch somewhere, like really bad, okay? And so I went through all this with my father confession at the time and blah, 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 all this stuff, and then we got to the point where, okay, we have to fill the void. What do we fill the void with, okay? And the door that was opened for me was service. And I looked at him like he was insane. And I'm not saying that this is everybody's how you fill the void. This is personal disclosure. It's got nothing to do with you. It could be something else. I mean, I think everybody has a service, broad definition of service, but that's besides the point, okay? He said, service. And he gave me examples. Like I said, I come from a very traditional place. It was very traditional service. You teach Sunday school and things like that. And I looked at him like he had two heads. I'm like, did you not just listen what I was telling you about? Like the whole reason I'm sitting here having this conversation with you is because of these bad friends and the social pressures and the things that we do and the things, like, are you listening? Like, I'm clearly not qualified to do something like that. Like, don't I need to be like a certain level of like good before you can ask me to do something like this? And he said, if you're asking him, don't argue with him when he gives you an answer. If you're asking him what to fill the void with, why are you saying no when he tells you what he wants? I didn't really have an answer to that. I usually have an answer, but I didn't have an answer to that, so I was like, okay. Like, and I told him, like, Abuna, your church, your service, your liability, okay? Like, I will do what you're telling me to do because I don't have an answer to argue with you right now, but your liability, okay? That, I think, is how you need to approach God. When he tells you to fill the void with something that is outside of your comfort zone, that doesn't make any sense, that like seems completely illogical, you tell him your liability. If this is what you've asked me to do, it's on you. And I told Abuna this, I'm like, when I fail, okay, and when there are kids who are worse off because I was there, your liability. And he said, there's an Arabic word that comes with it, but he said that, whatever this means, okay? And that's what he said, okay? Here we are like 100 years later, okay? And like, I really, like, I often have this conversation with people who are like, whatever, struggling with service and like that, and they always ask me like, you have such a rebellious personality, like, you're so like obnoxious, like, how come you never like left the church and doubted the church and what? Honestly, I should be rotting in a ditch somewhere, but I'm not because of this. Because when I was very young, someone taught me to let him fill the void with whatever he wanted. And at the time, he wanted service. I am not rotting in a ditch somewhere now, at age 30, because he filled the void at age whatever, however old I was, young, very young. Okay? That's why. Like I don't know how to earnestly tell you that this works. Like, I don't know how. And like, when I talk to my husband about it and like tell him all the things and the bad friends and like my sister-in-law, like she also grew up in like a smaller community, so like the things that they were doing are like not normal to her and whatever, like their mind is blown because it doesn't make any sense. But a lot of the times when he's pushing you outside of your comfort zone and he's bursting your bubble, it won't make sense. And it won't make sense because you don't see what he sees. You don't see the potential that he sees. You don't see where he wants you to end up and where he's walking you to. You don't see it, but he sees it. So just because it doesn't make sense to you, doesn't mean it doesn't make sense, okay? Like, that's, if I could give you one thing, it's that it won't be comfortable and it won't be logical necessarily, but if he's asked you to do it, just do it, and the liability is on him. Now, I just spent the whole talking about how you have to burst your bubble and you have to go forward and push yourself outside of your comfort zone or whatever. And now I'm just going to give a little bit of a caveat to that, okay? Just a little bit of a caveat, okay? My bubble at the time, and this is a snapshot in time, right? Like, my bubble changes. Like, I'm struggling with a bubble right now. I can tell you about it, but you're probably not interested. But There's one right now that he's trying to burst, and I'm desperately holding on to it and saying, please, God, no, please, please, God, okay? Okay, everybody's bubble is different, okay? Just because my bubble was service doesn't mean that yours is service, okay? I would love it to be, okay? But it's very time specific. It's whatever he thinks is right in your time. I don't know what it is, okay? What I am going to say, okay, is, and this is like a guiding principle, okay? I used to hate reading Acts. I thought it was so boring. I thought it was like a history textbook, okay? I went to Africa, and it all made sense after that, okay? So when he spoke to them in Acts, okay, and he said, you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth, okay? His chronological, like, list of where you will be witnesses was not arbitrary, okay? And if you look at the map up there, okay, he starts from the inside and he works his way out, okay? So you will be witnesses in Jerusalem, okay, like hometown, okay, like inner circle, where people know me and people have heard of me and like things are comfortable, okay? And then Judea, and then Samaria, and then the ends of the earth, okay? Like, you don't have to go from 0 to hero, okay? You don't have to do that, because he gets it, okay? So Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then the ends of the earth, okay? For me, okay, Jerusalem is me and him, okay? Let me burst some bubbles about what I think about him and what he wants from me and what he's called me to do, okay? And then Judea, for me. Take one step out, okay? You don't have to go from, like, Jerusalem to India. You don't have to do that, okay? You go Jerusalem, and then you take one step out. What's outside of Jerusalem is Judea, your family, your friends, your relationships, the things in that circle that need fixing, the things that don't make sense, the things that need to be worked on, okay? And then you take one step out. Samaria, your church, okay? I'm biased. I want everybody to serve. I think service is like the answer to life, okay? But your church, okay? And then you go ends of the earth. You don't need to go from 0 to hero. You don't need to go from never, ever, ever having, like, spoken to a crowd of people to standing on the street corner at Yonge and Dundas. That's not how it works, and that's not how he works, okay? He has something for you, and it doesn't have to be something that is, like out there. All it has to be is what he's asked of you. That's it, okay? And for me, this is like a guiding principle. Like, when I'm trying to fix things, I start with Jerusalem, and then I move out. Just small caveat, okay? It's okay, Mama's done. Okay, I'm all done. Any questions? Okay, so next week, we've talked about all conceptual things, right? Thank you, oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we've talked about all conceptual things. Milk, anybody want some milk? We've talked about all conceptual things. So what is the bubble? How do you burst the bubble? What are the steps? Next week, we're going to go practical. Like, do this. Like, tomorrow, wake up and do this, okay? Because I don't like to leave series without, like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and do this differently. Like, I need tangible outcomes. I'm like a deliverable kind of person. So next week, it's going to be deliverables, okay? All right.
Thank you, Sarah. So as she mentioned, one more week in this series, and then we'll start a new series after that. I just wanted to mention the goal of Onroute, just so we're all on the same page here, that we understand what the goal of Onroute. There's always 3 words that are on our posters. Do you guys know what those 3 words are? Not the church one, the Onroute one. It's 3 R's. Refuel is 1. Refresh and reconnect. So those are the 3 things that we want to accomplish in this particular meeting or this fellowship. So we want people to come here and feel refreshed. We don't want this to be like a heavy burden. Oh my God, Sunday after liturgy, I'm so tired, I don't want to go here. No, this is a place that we come and be refreshed, and that's why there's a little bit of refreshments here. I just came up with that one. I'm just saying, that's pretty good. Anyways, so refresh is one. Refuel is definitely, we want to fill ourselves also spiritually. So we have these series and different talks and so forth. And reconnect is not the least out of the three. It's really, we want to connect among each other, among this particular demographic, like the young adults and the young professionals. We want to be able to connect so that we could do things more together and that you guys could never feel alone. Because one of the visions or the missions of this particular parish is that no one is to ever stand alone in this parish. And we are pushing that forward with this meeting. So I want you guys to just always keep that in mind. So refuel, refresh, and reconnect. Those are the three things that we want to do in Onroute. So first of all, if you're not on our mailing list, please get on the mailing list for Onroute. You get one email a week. If you're not on the list, please see Christine. If you don't know who Christine is, this is Christine. Just give her email. And we promise you it's going to be one email. And I mentioned this last week. I tried to get them to send 2 emails one week, and she said no. No 2 emails, only one. So maybe I'll send one separately. But anyways, that's beside the point. So that's one thing. Also, Verena is, if she raise her hand, we always need help with service. It could be anything from cleaning up to food to ideas about different talks that you guys want, maybe different series. We're hoping at some point we're going to do a retreat that's going to be for the Onroute group here that we'll do something together. So any ideas that you have, please either reply back to the email, which is onroute@smsv.ca, or see either Verena, Christine, or Sarah. You could see one of those three, or myself. She's pointing, or myself. Any ideas? We want to just grow this meeting as much as possible. We do feel that there is a benefit to everyone that would attend. And there's a big demographics of young professionals and young adults in our church that kind of still don't know about the meeting. So spread the news, or spread the word, not the news. Spread the word. What? Huh? Oh yeah, spread the good news. Nice, Jess. She thought of that one right on the spot as well. All right. God bless you guys. Have a great week. We'll just pray, and then if we could help just with the chairs to put them aside. We'll face. From now on, we're going to set up this way. Okay? So whoever's setting up, we're setting up this way. The chairs to set up this way so we don't. All right. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this time. We ask you, Lord, to help us to burst our bubble and to get out of our comfort zone. We ask you, Lord, to guide us and to guide every single person that is standing here, to put a message in their heart on what exactly do you want us to do for the glory of your name. We're thankful, Lord, that we have a loving Father that takes us into his arms and that allows us to call him Father, and that we are your sons and daughters. We're so thankful for that. We pray for all those that are present here and those that don't have anyone to remember them. We ask you, Lord, to remember them and to make them feel your peace and your love. We pray all this through the intercessions of St. Mary, St. Maurice, and St. Verena. We pray thankfully together. Our Father, who art in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine the kingdom, the power, and the glory.